Once upon a time, in a lovely kingdom, there lived a beautiful girl named Snow White. She had a wicked stepmother, the queen, who was very jealous of her beauty. One day, the queen ordered a huntsman to take Snow White far into the forest and never return. But the kind huntsman couldn't hurt Snow White and told her to run away and never come back. Snow White ran deep into the forest and found a tiny cottage where she decided to rest. When the 7 dwarfs came home, they were surprised to find her there, and they welcomed her with open arms. They all sat down together for dinner, sharing stories and laughter, becoming the best of friends. But the wicked queen was angry that Snow White was still alive, so she disguised herself and made a plan. She went to the cottage, offered Snow White a beautiful shiny apple, saying it was a special treat. As soon as Snow White took a bite, she fell to the ground in a deep sleep. The 7 dwarfs were heartbroken and watched over her, hoping she would wake up one day. One day, a handsome prince arrived and kissed Snow White, breaking the wicked queen's curse. Snow White woke up, her heart filled with joy, and everyone celebrated her return to life. The prince and Snow White fell in love and promised to be together forever, while the dwarfs danced around them. They had a wonderful wedding in a grand castle, where everyone celebrated their love. Snow White and the prince lived happily ever after, while the 7 dwarfs remained her dear friends forever. And so, the tale of Snow White spread across the kingdom, bringing joy and happiness to everyone. Snow White and the prince often visited the dwarfs, sharing picnics and fun adventures in the forest. Under the twinkling stars, they shared dreams and laughter, creating memories that would last forever. Snow White painted lovely pictures, while the dwarfs built a big tree house for all their fun adventures. Every evening, Snow White read stories to the dwarfs in their tree house, filling their hearts with joy. In the garden, Snow White and the prince danced, while the dwarfs cheered and celebrated their love. The kingdom held a grand festival, celebrating love and friendship, with Snow White and the prince leading the parade. Snow White and the prince shared sweet moments at the festival, while the dwarfs enjoyed tasty treats and laughter all around. But far away, the wicked queen watched with envy, plotting her next move against the happy couple. In her dark castle, the queen brewed a sneaky potion, while Snow White and the prince enjoyed their peaceful garden. The wicked queen disguised herself as an old woman, carrying a basket of flowers to trick Snow White once more. She offered Snow White a beautiful enchanted flower, hoping to put her under a spell again. Just as Snow White was about to touch the flower, the prince raced over, sensing danger and ready to protect her. The prince swiftly took the flower away, and the old woman's disguise melted away to reveal the wicked queen in a fit of rage. The prince stood bravely in front of Snow White, just as the 7 dwarfs rushed in to help defend her. The wicked queen, furious, began casting her dark spell, but the brave dwarfs stood united to protect their friend. The prince drew his magical sword, ready to fight back, while Snow White felt strong and courageous, surrounded by her friends. A fierce battle began between the prince and the dwarfs against the queen's dark magic, lighting up the sky with sparks. With one powerful strike, the prince shattered the queen's magic, and the dwarfs cheered with all their might. The wicked queen vanished in a cloud of smoke, and Snow White, the prince, and the dwarfs celebrated their victory together. In the beautiful garden, Snow White and the prince embraced, while the dwarfs danced joyfully, celebrating love and friendship. As Snow White and the prince set off on their next adventure, they waved goodbye to the dwarfs, who smiled with joy in their hearts. Together, the prince and Snow White rode into the sunset, and the 7 dwarfs watched with pride, knowing their friendship would last forever. The kingdom was filled with joy as Snow White and the prince returned to their castle, greeted warmly by everyone who loved them. A grand celebration was held in the castle, where Snow White and the prince enjoyed a delightful feast with the dwarfs and villagers. In the grand hall, Snow White and the prince danced beautifully, while the 7 dwarfs cheered and clapped to the joyful music. As the night sky sparkled with colorful fireworks, Snow White, the prince, and the dwarfs watched in awe, filled with happiness. From the castle balcony, Snow White and the prince looked over their beautiful kingdom, while the dwarfs held a banner celebrating their happily ever after. In the bright sunshine, Snow White read stories to children in the meadow, sharing joy and laughter with everyone around.